Okay, let's just take a second and think about home. What does that word bring up for you? Is it like a smell from the kitchen, a certain chair?
Or just that feeling, that deep sigh of relief, like this is where I belong.
Exactly. Where you just fit. Comfort.
It's so fundamental, isn't it? That sense of security of knowing your place.
Absolutely. But, for so many people, especially folks who've moved countries, that simple idea of home, well, it gets really complicated fast.
Yeah, it stops being just one place. Or maybe sometimes it feels like it's not really any specific place anymore.
We heard from people, through some stories shared with us, about this feeling of like never being totally happy because you're always missing something from the other place.
That constant pull or like navigating life with a part of you that feels a bit hidden, maybe. Like it doesn't quite click with the new surroundings.
Like a piece of your own story that doesn't have a stage in your new life.
Yeah.
It's there, but kind of backstage.
It's like carrying this core part of yourself that the new world just doesn't quite have a frame for.
So today, we want to sort of unpack these feelings, these experiences. We're looking at stories and ideas a listener sent our way, different takes on immigrant life, identity, belonging.
Yeah, trying to get a feel for the emotional side of it, the practical stuff too, and how people actually find their way and figure out what home means now.
It was about the tough parts for sure, but also the amazing strength people show and how belonging can pop up in unexpected ways.
Right. So where do we start? The leaving part.
Let's do that. That very first step away. Not just packing boxes, but the emotional whiplash. Someone in the materials we looked at said they were just completely unprepared for that roller coaster.
Yeah, that unpreparedness feels like a really common thing. Moving isn't just changing addresses. There's this huge sense of loss that often goes unnamed. Research actually calls it cultural bereavement.
Cultural bereavement. Wow. That sounds heavy, like grief.
It is, essentially. It's grieving the loss of all the familiar stuff, how society worked, the values you grew up with, the little tiny nuances of your language, your support system.
So it's more than just missing your friends.
Oh, definitely. Missing people is huge, of course. But this bereavement, it can show up as sadness, obviously, but also guilt about leaving, maybe having memories just pop into your head unwanted, lots of anxiety.
Cultural bereavement.
Yeah.
That really puts a name to something profound. I was really struck by that bit about language nuances. Someone moving between the UK and the US, you'd think they're pretty similar.
Superficially, yeah.
But they said it felt like going from having this amazing painter's palette of ways to express themselves down to just a basic box of primary colors.
Isn't that a great way to put it? It shows language isn't just words for things. It's personality, it's humor, it's how we connect on subtle levels.
So when you lose that full palette, the idioms, the right tone,
Yeah.
the stuff, everyone just gets back home. It feels like parts of you just fade because there's no way to bring them out in the new place.
Exactly. Those subtle shades of your personality just don't translate easily.
And it's not just the formal language, right? It's the inside jokes, the shared history. Someone mentioned visiting home and friends are laughing about an old story and try to explain it later, but
So you had to be there.
yeah. Exactly that. You had to be there to get why it was funny. And suddenly you feel this gap, this disconnect from your own past.
That sense of being cut off from who you were, from that shared life. Yeah, it's a real part of the experience for many.
Okay, so that's the initial emotional wave. But then there's the day-to-day reality of living in the new place. The practical stuff, the social stuff. The sources painted a really interesting contrast sometimes.
They did. Like, sometimes life gets easier in some ways. One person comparing life to India mentioned things like having domestic help readily available or not having to clean your own car windows at the gas station.
Little things, but they add up.
And healthcare was a big one. They mentioned easier access, maybe cheaper, not waiting hours in the ER, getting tests done quickly, things that were maybe a struggle back home.
Right, those practical wins can make a big difference. But then the flip side, people also talked about frustrations in their home country. Things like, government stuff being slow, manual, maybe even needing bribes.
Yeah, that kind of bureaucracy. And housing costs going through the roof back home, making things difficult there, too.
And no matter where you're going, the actual immigration process itself sounds like a nightmare sometimes.
Often is. One source mentioned it's usually really long, costs a lot, and feels anything but welcoming. It kind of pushes back on that idea that you can just, immigrate legally like it's a simple form to fill out.
So much red tape. And then once you're there, you deal with the social side. Stereotypes.
Yeah.
The sources had examples like,
Oh, yeah. Being asked, "Are all Africans runners?" Or "Do you eat spiders?" Or getting labeled like kimchi boy for someone from Korea.
Uh, that ranges from just ignorance to, well, outright discrimination, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. The stories included things like a boyfriend not liking someone's accent, or people literally stopping a conversation when they find out you're from China, or even a teacher making these awful generalizations about a whole culture.
That must be incredibly isolating, painful.
Definitely. And it connects to the wider picture, how communities react to change. We should probably mention, just sticking to what the sources said, that some people expressed feeling like their country had changed too much, a loss of the familiar.
Right. There was a viewpoint from the UK, materials about communities not looking like England anymore, and that feeling being existential for some. We're just relaying these views impartially, of course.
Exactly. And it's important context. The sources also brought up counterpoints like culture changes anyway internally, and immigrants often contribute a lot economically, sometimes paying more in taxes than they use in services.
We're not taking sides here, just showing the different perspectives that are out there, part of the environment people walk into.
For sure. And with all that going on outside, the big question becomes really internal, doesn't it? Where is home then?
Yeah, and the answers are all over the place. People saying they feel half-half, like, split. Some identifying as, say, Korean living in Singapore. Their origin is key, but their life is here.
Or people who might look different from the majority, but say, my whole life is here. This is my home, regardless of appearance.
And for so many, it just comes down to home is where my family is. Simple as that.
That flexibility, that's really key, isn't it? Redefining it. There's also this interesting paradox the research mentioned about fitting in.
Oh, yeah?
Well, picking up the local norms, making them your own, that does help you manage emotions better day to day. It makes things smoother, less draining.
Okay, that makes sense.
But true belonging, that deep connection, requires being able to share your feelings, your vulnerability, and sometimes the very cultural norms you adopt might discourage that.
Ah, I see. So you might look like you fit in perfectly, but if the culture is, say, more reserved about emotions,
Exactly. If the norm is not to burden others, you might struggle to build those really deep, emotionally open relationships you need to feel truly deeply rooted, even if you're functioning fine on the surface.
functioning versus belonging, that's a really important difference. And families have their own layer of complexity in all this.
Oh, absolutely. There was research on immigrant families suggesting that sometimes the more kids acculturate, adopt the new culture's values and ways, the more conflict there can be with parents, especially over those values and norms.
Wait, really? That seems backwards. You'd think fitting in more would smooth things out.
Right, it feels counterintuitive. But the study found this interesting twist. While adapting more could cause friction in some areas, holding on to certain traditional cultural values, especially a strong sense of filial obligation, that respect and duty towards parents actually seem to protect against conflict.
So keeping that sense of family duty strong helped reduce arguments, even about other things like money or parenting.
Across the board, yeah. That value seemed to act like a buffer. The research also mentioned that when adult children were providing hands-on care for aging parents, like helping with bathing, dressing, those basic daily needs,
Right, the really personal stuff.
compared to just helping with, say, shopping or finances, that hands-on care was linked to more conflict, specifically around money and health decisions within the family.
Wow, so that level of caregiving brings up its own specific tensions. And then there's that huge emotional weight we heard about, trying to balance what you want for your life with what your family expects or what you feel you owe them.
Someone described it as feeling caught right in the middle, choosing yourself versus not abandoning your family.
That sounds incredibly difficult, like a constant balancing act.
It was described as this painful fight between being selfish and being selfless. People talked about feeling like a terrible daughter or son after calls with parents, just feeling intense guilt because following their own path felt like leaving family behind, even if the parents were actually supportive.
You can really feel that pressure, that guilt in the stories. It just shows the constant juggling act involved.
Which leads us nicely into, okay, how do people cope? How do they build resilience and find that sense of belonging anyway?
Right, shifting to finding your footing. One thing that came up again and again in the research was social support. Just having people.
Absolutely crucial. Studies clearly show strong social connections go hand in hand with resilience and they fight off loneliness. Finding your tribe, your people, is just fundamental.
Building those relationships is key for emotional well-being. And there was another factor linked to less family conflict over values, having a sense of control.
Yeah, what researchers call mastery, feeling like you have some control over your own life, your own direction. That sense of personal empowerment seems to spill over and reduce friction elsewhere, including within the family.
That idea of taking control, building something new, really came through in some of the stories, like Ali Dieng's story moving from Africa to the U.S.
No, yeah, his was powerful.
Because he didn't just wait for belonging to happen to him. He went out and sought it. He shared his culture drumming, started programs to help others connect, and ended up becoming a city councilor.
It's such a great example of how actively contributing, getting involved in the community you've joined, can be a really powerful way to create that sense of belonging for yourself. And he had that great quote.
Oh, the one about going together?
Yeah, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, let's all go together. That captures it, doesn't it? That spirit of building something collectively.
It really does. And that connects back to what immigrants bring, doesn't it? Not
Hmm.
just the economic stuff we mentioned, which is significant, but the cultural richness, too. Like someone missing specific foods from home, that small detail hints at the whole vibrant mix of traditions and tastes that newcomers add.
Yeah, the food, the music, the perspectives, it all adds layers. And it seems clear from the stories that even while people are building this new life, staying connected to home, supporting family back there, maybe contributing to causes, that often remains super important.
It's not really about erasing the old home, is it? It's more like expanding the definition,
Hmm.
adding chapters.
Exactly. It's rarely an either.
So, thinking about all this, maybe bringing it back to you listening, your own idea of home. What we've kind of explored here, pulling from these different experiences, is that for immigrants, home and identity aren't usually fixed things.
No, they're really fluid, they're complex, they keep evolving. It's not just pinned to one dot on a map or one single culture.
It's this ongoing process of, well, adapting, building, figuring it out as you go.
Mm.
One source put it really nicely, saying that moving countries, while, yeah, it can be tough, even painful, it's also a kind of promise,
A promise. How so?
like an opportunity,
Yeah.
an exciting chance for transformation, for reinventing yourself in some ways.
That's a hopeful way to look at it. It definitely takes enormous strength, doesn't it? And vulnerability to juggle those different worlds, those different parts of who you are, all those expectations.
Oh, sure.
And maybe that leaves us with a thought to chew on. If home isn't just a place you left, or even just the people you started out with, what does it actually become?
Hmm. Is it like a state of mind, something you kind of cultivate inside yourself, a feeling of peace?
Or is it something more tangible, something
Yeah.
you build brick by brick with other people, making community wherever you happen to land?
What can we all maybe learn from that journey, that search for belonging, and the resilience it takes? Something to think about.